You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. It's 7:38 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And the topic that I thought I would talk about this evening was, how do you know if you're too needy? Or another way to put that would be, how do you know if you're too needy, or if you're expressing reasonable requests for care in a relationship? And this will depend greatly on your attachment strategy. But I would like to say that the main way to tell is, are you expressing authentic needs to somebody that actually has the capacity to meet those needs? And if you are, what you may find is that they actually do meet them, and that the declaration of being too needy is coming from a place of an unwillingness to meet those needs. John Bowlby famously said, "You're only as needy as your unmet needs." And then, depending on how the constellation of your attachment expression of those needs goes, you either can negotiate a way in a relationship where your needs are met, or you cannot do that. And when you can't do that, often those needs go unmet. So when you look at the way that secure people couple, they form collaborative relationships with somebody who's good at taking care of them. Hold on one second. Lucy is. Secure people form collaborative relationships. That is to say, they negotiate how they want to be taken care of. And I talk about this in my plan for how to date like a secure person. The main thing that you're looking for in a close relationship is somebody who's emotionally regulating to you. And so the first part of the relationship is really spent attempting to touch into that quality of the other person. So in multiple situations over a few months of time, you evaluate whether or not somebody can emotionally regulate you. Do you feel better? Do you feel the same? Do you feel worse? And then you turn that around and see whether you're reliably regulating for the other person. Because if you're not reliably regulating for the other person, they're not likely to put the time, energy, and resources into the relationship that you will need to form that kind of close bond. If they do, then you have to get on to, how do you take care of them in a way that they feel well taken care of? And in order to know how to take care of somebody else, you have to be able to tell them how you need to be taken care of. Secure people tend to have spent a lifetime being well taken care of because they learned the languages of expressing their needs in a way that the other person can be responsive to them. And then you flip it around. Will they take care of you in the way that you need to? And you have to instruct them how to do that. You have to tell them what you need from them. And the way that that language works is, you instruct the other person on how to take care of you. You tell them when you need the care, and they begin to identify when it is that you need the care so that they can just offer it to you without you having to always prompt them to do it. And when you learn somebody well enough and you can recognize when they need the kind of care that they need, you just offer it to them and they feel taken care of. When you don't have to solicit every single time the care that you want, that somebody just takes that on and does that for you, is when you really have a sense of being well taken care of. It fosters a tremendous sense of safety in the relationship. You do that for them, they do that for you. All of this is in support of exploration. So does the thing that really gets you going, the thing that really matters to you, the thing that really provides meaning, is that closely enough aligned with what they find so meaningful so that there's a synergy between it. So that's the natural environment of security. In insecure and disorganized relationships, it's different than that. Dismissing people do not reciprocate care, so that if you're in a relationship with a dismissing person, you aren't going to receive care. So you might find yourself pretty needy in that relationship because you're not receiving the care that you would need so that you would feel taken care of. Preoccupied people make a big declaration about providing care, but it isn't actually an authentic expression of providing care. They provide care, but there's usually an implicit contract that they're expecting to receive care in exchange for the care that they're providing. So this puts it into a transactional frame rather than a collaborative frame. I take care of you so that you'll take care of me, and the way that I know that the care is good is as if I receive the care that I want. But since you're not explicitly telling people what the care is that you want, it's quite hit or miss whether the care is any good. And since you're demanding, in some sense, care that you're never explicitly asking for, it really does set you up to feel uncared for. Not making sense. The way out of that, of course, is to touch into the authentic expression of these are the things that I need to feel taken care of. But if you're in a relationship to a dismissing person, they don't tend to want to reciprocate. In fact, they like not to have to reciprocate. And the reason that they like not having to reciprocate is it makes them feel that you won't abandon them. Does that sound strange? The way that dismissing people learn to be in relationship is by providing idealization as a service. So they strip out anything that's negative and offer expressions of interest in these highly idealized way. And if they're good at it, it feels really good, remarkably good, as if somebody is telling you something that you've waited your entire lifetime to hear from somebody else, as if they're really connected to you. They really see you and know what it is that you want and want to hear. And what you've missed is that they've elicited this information from you and then made it more elaborate, more appealing. And then when you're drawn to them, they continue to pull you along with this idealized content until they think that you're really hooked on them. And then they begin to withhold the idealized contact and withdraw so that you'll be in a process of actively pursuing them. The reason that that works for them is because your active pursuit of them is the thing that reassures them that they won't be abandoned. Christian.
George, I know that this is like totally not a conscious thing. When you describe it in this kind of like step-by-step way, it sounds like it's this kind of really conscious thing. So I'm curious about how that process actually practically plays out, of the flip from idealizing to withholding that. If there's like there tend to be certain triggers for that, or I mean, you kind of just said that, but there's just something about it that it seems really deliberate when you're kind of describing it that way. And I know that you're not actually describing it that way, but I don't know if you kind of get what I'm asking.
You're suggesting, do they have the mentalizing capacity to see what's happening? And do they have an alternative model for how to be in relationship that they're comparing it to? And then are they making the decision to use the dismissing strategy instead of the secure strategy? but they don't have the mentalizing capacity to tell, and they don't have an alternative model. And they do want to be really good at the model that they have. They want to be able to seduce you. They want to be able to pull you in. They want to be able to get you to take care of them. That's all intentional and conscious, but it isn't, as you're implying, that they know what secure functioning relationships are like, and they just decide not to do the secure thing and they're going to do the dismissing thing instead. They don't have any awareness of collaborative relationships. They've never experienced them really. It certainly was never something that was presented to them in the family system that they grew up in.
So they kind of have like an internal threshold of like, I've attained my goal of kind of hooking the other person, of like their attention is more and more now on me and mine. And then when that threshold is sort of hit, then it becomes like too much, or it's like I've kind of achieved.
They pull you in so that you'll be in a forward motion toward them. That reassures them or that they won't be abandoned. But then if you try to get too close or interfere with the things that they like to do, they experience that as an intrusion. And so they withdraw from the intrusion in that sense. So consciously for them, the experience is probably that you're too demanding. You're demanding that I reciprocate care, which I'm not going to do. And you want information, personal information that I'm also not going to provide you.
Okay. So it sounds like they're, to like put this on an unconscious level, it's like they're victims of their own success. They're so good at seducing that now it's too close.
Right.
Okay.
But you're assuming that the preoccupied person actually wants the closeness, but they don't either. What you'll notice in those relationships is that there's a movement back and forth, but the distance for intimacy is always maintained. So the dismissing person is withdrawing and the preoccupied person is pursuing, and they're maintaining an intimate distance. If the preoccupied person gets totally burned out and fed up with it and storms off, they're really thinking that they're hoping that the dismissing person will begin to pursue them the way that it was in the beginning of the relationship. And very often the dismissing person does that. And then as soon as the preoccupied person turns around and begins to come close, the dismissing person begins to withdraw, and that's what maintains the distance.
Okay. But a secure pair.
So they're both in it.
Right.
And they're both interested in maintaining a transactional relationship, not an intimate.
Okay. So the secure pair,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The secure pair would close that distance and have like a closer level of intimacy than that kind of maintained distance that goes back and forth.
Yes, they would come together for intimacy and then they would separate and explore and then come together for intimacy. That's the dynamic of secure functioning relationship.
Okay.
In order to be in an intimate, secure relationship, you have to be willing to express yourself authentically, express your needs authentically, so that the other person will know how to take care of you. But preoccupied people are really embedded in pretend mode. So it's unusual for them to actually present themselves authentically. So they can't get that collaborative care from somebody else because they don't tell anybody else really what it is that they need. Remember, the operation for preoccupied people is to scan the environment, look for a problem, and then present the problem, which isn't even their own, or that they have an authentic interest in, as something that can be used to connect to somebody else. So they're looking for proximity without intimacy. If you present a problem to somebody that is a pretend problem, and you're in a relationship to a dismissing person, that really works for them because they can pretend to solve it. And so a lot of the exchange in dismissing and preoccupied relationships is around a dance of, this is a pretend problem I need you to solve. This is a pretend solution to the pretend problem that you have. Neither one of them cares whether the problem is solved, because the communication is not about the problem. It's about proximity, really.
Okay.
George, the need of the preoccupied is closeness, right?
What?
You said the need of the preoccupied person is closeness, but is not
Is proximity, but not
closeness.
emotional and cognitive intimacy.
Physical proximity.
Right.
I see.
You know, preoccupied people tend to trade sex for proximity, but the sex isn't necessarily gratifying, because it isn't actually about sexual gratification, it's about physical proximity. But they don't present a request for physical proximity, they express an offer of sex. So the preoccupied person is disinterested in the sex, really. It's an exchange for the physical proximity, the interest of the other. And in a heterodynamic or in a gay male dynamic, the problem with that is the arousal structure for men. One of it is that the partner is turned on. And if the motivation for the contact is not actual sexual gratification, but proximity, it might not be enough of a registered turn on that it wouldn't then begin to cause sort of performance problems in the sexual expression, which would not be a problem for the preoccupied person because it makes it last longer, makes the proximity last longer. And since the goal was never gratification, it's not an issue. But it sometimes can be an issue for the partner who actually is there for the sexual gratification.
So it's like being in the crowd. It's like being close to a crowd, even though I don't care what. It's almost like I'm happy as long as I'm with a group of friends, physical proximity, but I don't really care about connecting with the friends.
More on the dismissing side, the preoccupied side, there's often a mental obsession that comes with it, a constant thought of the other person. Why would allowing your thought processes to be hijacked and consumed by thinking about somebody else make sense for somebody? Because preoccupied people have an inhibition around exploring something that would be compelling enough to make it appear to them that they can't spend the time, energy, and resources on exploring something that would get them off the hook from exploring works for them. So the constant thought process of the other person, the constant attempting to care for the other person, the constant attempts at proximity to the other person, all work because they justify why you don't pursue your own exploration. Not making sense. So it's easy enough to vilify the dismissing side of this equation, but it's a very nicely balanced equation that works very well for both people, that provides both people the thing that they need in the relationship so that they don't actually have to address what's going on with themselves. Christian?
So when Sting talked about his like 8-hour tantric sex sessions, he was actually giving away that he was torturing his avoidant partner with his preoccupied.
I didn't hear the interview, so I'm not sure. But one of the things that sex expression with people that you don't really know, or anonymous encounters or one night stands, have to offer is there's no accountability for the presentation that you make. There's no long-term commitment to provide care. And so in some sense, it creates a window of freedom in order to make the expression. It is also often driven by the unmet needs that compel you over a lot of the inhibition. But that as you get to know somebody and the attachment system is engaged and there's a concern about abandonment, then it can be more inhibiting in terms of how you engage. Tantra is, I think, quite role-based, so it is also not necessarily intimate. At least most of the time when it's described to me, it doesn't sound intimate. It's in some sense, if you compare it to meditation, it's like the pursuit of meditative states, but not necessarily the pursuit of the deeper understanding of the human condition. Have you been to an orgy? In my experience, they're highly overrated. And then the monogamy poly thing is just, I think, really fairly fixed part of your sexual orientation, and you either can do it or you can't do it. And advocacy for it is, can be described that way. You either can or you can't, and it's a spectrum. So you have some flexibility, or maybe you're totally fluid in this. But even so, you still have to find a way to express your needs authentically, which means you have to understand what they are. And then you have to find a way to authentically express them to somebody actually who has the capacity to meet those needs. It's not useful to figure out what your needs are and then choose somebody that really can't meet them and then ask them to meet them and be disappointed when they can't. You really do have to see clearly what it is you need and who can meet them, and then attempt to engage in a collaborative exchange with them. Udit?
It's a very quick question because this is such a repeated thing in my head. We use the general terminology of needs. You've seen couples talk with each other. Are their needs so general in terms of providing safety? And how specific do people talk when they talk about their needs to some other person? Because they're so generic all the time.
Well,
like, for example, carrying bags. Thing, like one of the women that I met, she will not carry her own bags when you reach someplace. She will like, I will not carry my bags. I want you to carry it, all her bags, which is very odd for me.
well, that's teleological, right? It's an emblem or a totem that you care for her. So she's giving you a totem. And then if you do it, that means you love her. And if you don't do it, it means that you don't. And, there's lots of those. I worked with a couple. What she wanted when she came home was for him to get off the couch and come over and give her a hug and ask her how her day went.
Right.
And he got home from work 2 hours before she did and just watched the game. And by the time she came in, he was half asleep. And he would wave from the couch, but that was as much as he would do. And it would infuriate her because she felt that he didn't care about her. And so those kinds of expressions can make sense when they're added together. You do that for her. If it were me, of course, I would get bellhop or something. But or then what does she need to do for you in order for that to feel worth it to you?
I mean, that would be something else, right? That would not be dependent, like that care for me would be, I don't know, cooking for me, which will be completely independent of me carrying the bags, which I didn't enjoy. Of course, why would I enjoy carrying bags that
Well, you would enjoy carrying the bags if she then made your favorite meal, and that was the deal.
ways, then I thought you would be like, oh, this is transactional. This should not. You should actually enjoy taking care of the other person. Then I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't sit right.
Well, this is one of the things that I say that you need to find out from the other person what they need in order to feel taken care of. And then you have to find out whether you enjoy it. This would be an example of somebody needing something from you for care that doing it you don't enjoy. And so you don't want to do it. And so there's a grumble that comes along with it. That would not be a good match unless she made it worth your while. And then you think, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get that. And that makes total sense. The reason it's not transactional is because it's an agreement to do that continuously rather than negotiating each individual occurrence of it. You just take it on to do it.
You put that in context. You put that in taking care context. Now I'm like, wait a second. I actually would like to do that for her now. Because I didn't see that in that context, that she likes to be taken care of by me carrying the bags. It just felt like, wait a second, I have no problem carrying the bags now. For some reason, as soon as that thing that you said that, oh, this is how she likes to be taken care of.
Right. Ooh. That's the thing you're doing, figuring out how to take care of them so that they feel well taken care of, which means they'll be in good shape to take care of you. But in a collaborative relationship, that means that she's obligated to do the thing for you that you want. And it just happens without you having to ask for it each time. You know that that's
what she go down with me.
Huh?
I made her go down with me just to walk with me, not even carrying the bags. And she got really pissed off. But anyway, now it makes sense.
So that, yeah. Well, you didn't meet her need, and then you were demanding that she meet yours. So that would be an unfair exchange.
Is there any other examples of needs? Just like what I understand this couch example, but isn't everybody like to be hugged? And
no, they don't. Physical touch really is very different in people.
Really?
And how you touch them is very different. I'm trying to think of what the examples were. I did a session which was quite plain in terms of it. The session started with the woman saying that her husband was not taking care of her in the way that he agreed to. And then he said, but I did these 5 things for you. And then he listed them off. And then she said, yes, you did those 5 things for me, but you didn't do the 3 things I asked you to do. And I don't care whether anybody does those 5 things that you did. And he said, well, the things that you wanted weren't important, but the things that I did for you, those are important. And we very often get into this bind of taking care of somebody in the way that we like to be taken care of, thinking that the way that we like to be taken care of is universally meaningful. But it really isn't. It's just what we like. And so then you have to find out from them what they like. And you have to do it enough with a good enough spirit that makes them feel taken care of. Otherwise, you're going to have somebody who keeps demanding that you take care of them. That's where the too needy piece comes in. And if you're feeling not taken care of, and you've expressed yourself authentically, then you have to examine whether the energy that you're flowing into the relationship makes sense, because the other person isn't reciprocating, which is very, very different from if you're not really expressing to the other person what your needs are, but expecting them to intuit and provide the need for you. Then you're constantly going to have to be requesting care because you're not actually talking about the thing that you need in the relationship. So when you're coming from pretend mode, where you're pretending to be one thing or another and pretending to need one thing or another that isn't actually what's authentically what you need, then you're very likely going to be constantly in a state of deprivation and hectoring the other person to be responsible or responsive. And they're not going to know what to do. And at a certain point, they're not going to be interested in doing too much more because everything that they've done hasn't been enough. What happens if you don't know what you need? Then you have to collaborate with the other person because each relationship is unique. And you're bringing your attachment ingredients and they're bringing their attachment ingredients. And you're cooking up an attachment relationship between you. May not be obvious what you need. And then you have to engage in this creative collaborative exchange with the other person to discover in what ways could they take care of you that felt meaningful to you. Then you could collaborate with them to discover what things you could do for them that they would find meaningful, and then begin to develop this language of exchange around care. Disorganized people, it's very difficult for disorganized people to be willing to express authentically what they need because those pathways in early childhood, if there's abuse, were the pathways that were exploited so that they could be abused, so that they found themselves in the situation where they were abused. And so they hint at it, or they present it in sort of a masked way, but they're very sensitive to whether they're seen or not. And the metaphor I like to use is you've gotten one of the Harry Potter invisibility cloaks and you've put it over yourself. And then when people can't see you, you get mad. So that's one of the dynamics of the insecure relationship. You don't express yourself authentically because you're too frightened to do it. You feel completely unsure about whether the person that you've chosen to attempt to be in relationship will hurt you or they won't. You really need to stay constantly in a protective stance so that if they do turn out to be somebody that would hurt you, you can protect yourself. And then you're enraged that they don't know what to do to take care of you. You don't feel seen by them. Is that making sense? Now, the other thing that insecure and disorganized people do that secure people don't do is they rush in. And particularly disorganized people who spend most of their time alone and spend most of their time hidden, when they find somebody that they feel a sense of safety to begin to express themselves to, it's like a gushing of information that's pouring out of them because it feels so good to finally have somebody to exchange information with, but it tends to propel you into the relationship much too fast. And the reason that you can't tell whether somebody's reliable or whether they'll hurt you or not is because you skip over all the preliminaries and connect in an overly intimate way too fast, and often overcommit to relationships too quickly. And then when you discover the other person's capacity and they discover your capacities, often what you find is that the initial burst into the relationship is unsustainable. And there's a disappointment that it isn't working. But it hasn't been a carefully constructed system of relating, which is necessary for stable long-term relationships. It's really been a rush in, and mainly who you're relating to is projection, because you don't have any other way of knowing who they are. And the commitments are made whether you know they have the capacity to meet those needs. Secure people, they offer a little bit of trust. They see how the person does with it. If they do well with it, they offer a little bit more trust. And the intimacy is very slow, steady but slow. So there's a sense of safety that's built into the communication. There's a sense of a reliable response that's meaningful. So part of this is really, for insecure and disorganized people, slowing down. Dismissing people need to change their mind about being authentically expressive and providing care for the other person. That's really the way into collaborative relationships. And they do have most of those skills, so it goes easy for them. Because relationships are really meant to support exploration, the main piece that preoccupied people need to take on is learning to have meaningful explorations so that they can hold up their end of the agreement in the relationship, which is that there's a synergy between our primary relationships that really floats our expressions to each other. There's this exchange of information about things that matter. Disorganized people need to slow down and begin to take very small risks at presenting themselves authentically. But the main issue for them is reliability. They need to really attend to doing the things that they say they're going to do in a timely manner and not doing the things that they say they're not going to do, so that other people are willing to rely on them. The main problem that disorganized people have in relationships is that they're so unreliable, nobody's willing to take a risk on them. So they're mainly involved with other disorganized people who are also so unreliable that you can't depend on the relationship. Not being able to depend on the relationship, you are then essentially alone to emotionally regulate yourself, which is one of the reasons why there's so much isolation in that demographic. Udit?
So this non-reliability of things is only in context of relationship, or is it also in their lives? Like not doing things on time, or they have things they want to do, but they're not doing it
Yes, the whole life.
the whole life.
They're not even reliable to themselves.
I see. It's almost like having a list of 30 things. And why is that? Because there's no other involved. Why? What's the cause for that? For not doing things that they want to do, like?
So the attachment system and the exploration system are like a toggle switch. When the attachment system activates, the exploration shuts off. When the attachment system is settled, the exploration system turns back on. Because there's they don't have close relationships that they can rely on to help calm an activation of the attachment system stays activated. And when it's activated, the exploration system is off so that they can't engage in the things that they would want to do. And because they mainly rely on social isolation and their own ability to settle it, it takes an unpredictable amount of time to settle the attachment activation. So they're going along and everything is pretty good. And then the attachment system turns on and the exploration system turns off and they withdraw in order to self-soothe. But it takes them a couple of days to settle.
So it does settle. I thought they're just always in emotional.
Well, they use perseverating thoughts to regulate themselves. And so they're often in a chaotic emotional state. But yeah, eventually the attachment system turns off, the exploration system turns on, and then they show up ready to go. And even if there's been, let's say, an interval of 3 days. And then you're thinking, well, they ghosted me for 3 days and now they're showing up like nothing happened. Or 6 weeks. Or 2 years. It's really unpredictable how long it will take to settle.
But even in the social isolation where the exploration system is back on, they're still pursuing their explorations.
If the attachment activation doesn't settle, it's just on.
It's always on, right?
Well, when you look at preoccupied people, that's the constant state of them. They're always in, the attachment system is hyperactivated. It's one of the reasons why they're constantly seeking proximity, because the proximity is the thing that will help them shut down the attachment activation.
All day, every day, like 24 hours a day.
Yeah. So they don't explore. Well, when they have actual physical proximity and they've been able to empathetically connect and regulate the other person, they can feel a sense of being settled. That's why they're willing to accept the sparse care from the dismissing person, because for them it's about settling the attachment activation. Doesn't matter who it is that settles the attachment activation. That's why intimacy isn't required. It's not intimate. It's automatic and unconscious. It's biology. Bummer. If you have a relationship with somebody and you've told them the things that activate your attachment system, and you've told them how to help you settle it, then of course you want to rush over and see them, because in a half an hour you're going to feel better. You're going to be able to resume your exploration. But if you don't do that with somebody else, then that doesn't happen. Once you see the advantage of it, oh, I'm totally activated. I can't settle myself. I can go and hang out with my friend for about half an hour and I'll be back in balance. You see the value of it. It's like really stark, the value of that, if you haven't had it. If you've always had it, it's like the water, right? Why isn't everybody doing this? It's so obvious. And that's why once you find somebody who's regulating, that you're also regulating for, and you enjoy taking care of them, they're really, really valuable. And you want to flow the energy into maintaining that relationship so that it's available to you when you need it, so that you can regulate and you don't have to spend the hours of the days in distress. Make sense?
I do want to point out a small nuance where the awareness of you, where the emotional system is off, or you're walking around your day, is very, maybe you got used to it so much that it's very hard to just know, oh, like I'm in that state right now.
Right.
It's a
So then you
very
have to,
low feeling.
so the not permitting the conscious awareness of your emotional expression is something that can be worked through just doing the noting feeling states practice relentlessly every waking moment. But yes, if you don't have an awareness of that, it makes the cognitive piece, the cognitive understanding of what's going on more important. And then depending on how you're evaluating the environment that you're in, it will be satisfying or not satisfying. And then we're into that list of that hierarchy of preferences. If you're in an environment that's rich in the things that matter to you, it seems better. And if you're not, it doesn't seem good. And it's easy to associate that with how everything is going, rather than just seeing it as the environment that you're in. Is that making sense? So coming into it, and we really do, as we practice meditation and pursue a deeper understanding of the human condition, to come into this place of the sacredness of everything. That opens up the possibility of the ordinariness of so much of what each day is like also takes on that quality of sacredness as an expression of life. You know, you live in a body. The body is prone to rhythms. It wakes up in the morning. It goes to sleep at night. It needs to have food. It needs to have rest. It needs to have medicine. And all of those things need to happen every day. And it gets repetitious, right? There's a sameness to it, an ordinariness to it. And we can't discount the ordinariness as somehow separate from the ecstatic states that we can get into in our practice. We want to, in some ways, see them similarly, that the ordinariness of things is as sacred as these astonishing states that we can pump ourselves into. So that you don't have these highs and lows, really. You have this continuous sense of the sacredness of all things, the sacredness of all people that you encounter. Is that making sense? We don't have that in our culture too well. We really do have a very hierarchical culture, and we really do see some sets of people as more valuable than other sets of people. And it's constantly being pushed out to us in media to reinforce that, which does tend to create a constant sense of dissatisfaction. But do understand that this is about selling things. All of this is an expression of sales. And the way that sales work is you frighten somebody so that they have a problem that needs a solution, so that you can offer them your solution to the problem, which they will then pay you to provide. Is that making sense? Scare the shit out of you and then offer you the magic solution that you wouldn't necessarily be interested in if you weren't frightened. But you're so frightened that you can't mentalize that it's actually a manufactured fear in the sales process. Not making sense. I always find it, having been a professional salesperson for 10 years, how routine the fear desire pattern is in media expressions. What about doing a little meditation? All right, let go of the meditation. Comments or questions about that?
The question is, does the practice get a little hard with time? There's
Harder or easier?
hard. I mean, there was a transition where it felt like, I don't know how to put this, but there's enough space for me to go beyond it. It's almost like I'm okay with present. I mean, there's enough peace in the mind so that I cannot push it beyond what it is right now. Unless it's joy, unless it's a different feeling.
The idea is to be able to establish a particular view and hold it as you wish. But if you do hold the loving kindness view over, say, a period of days, everything becomes astonishingly beautiful. And so when you begin to understand that you can create a view and hold it, and that it changes the way that you perceive everything, and you get good at perceiving it in a positive way, you move through the world in a way that's very different than if you create, say, an anger view where everything is difficult, or a sadness view where everything is bleak. The world is the same. It's just that you're perceiving it in a different way, so that the flow of energy, the flow of responses that you make to it is different.
Is there a peace view?
That would be equanimity.
Right.
But this is not equanimity. It's intentionally not equanimity.
Aha. Okay, that helps. So I
So if
should.
you're settling into equanimity, you've gone too far and you want to redirect it into the energy of loving kindness.
It's very strong. I just can't get out of it. It's just like
The phrase for equanimity practice is things are just as they are, things are impermanent, joy and sorrow arise and pass away. All beings, you got it, right?
I mean, I do get lost in thought, don't get me wrong, but it's just that I just don't feel the need for loving kindness.
Then use the equanimity phrase.
But I'm already in the equanimity phase.
Oh, you're already doing the equanimity phrase?
The view, sorry, that I thought that's what you were
No,
telling
what
me.
I'm saying is if you notice that you've slipped into equanimity and you don't want to come out of it, switch the phrase.
Okay, I do want to come out of it, right? Or I don't. Or just
It's very ordinary to overshoot loving kindness and end up in equanimity.
oh, it's after loving kindness.
Yeah. So you come into equanimity, you come into intense concentration with loving kindness as the object, you overshoot it and uh, uh, you're in the Vipassana jhanas. You've dropped out of the Brahma Viharas into the Vipassana jhanas. Then you could abandon the phrase because you don't really need them anymore.
What feels like my natural state, so I feel like I'm missing something.
Well, you're missing the development of the agency to cause these more ecstatic states.
So I should go back. That's the conclusion.
I would do that.
Okay.
But until you really have that extended practice with the loving kindness, and you really get that huge blast of how the world can be, it's harder to get yourself to do it.
Motivation. Okay. Thank you.
Christian?
I was just gonna suggest, Mudit, it might be good to like explore different easy people. Like I have some people, for me, I have some people that the moment I think of them, I just kind of start laughing. And that to me kind of brings up loving kindness. And, I maybe sometimes I'll use like, I have some friends that have young children. That's pretty easy. So it might be that if you kind of find the right person to practice with, that you can really, really get the mind state kind of locked in with how the kind of sensory quality of it, and it becomes so familiar that you can then start to explore that with other people.
Yeah, I used to use my nephew, and it's just so strong that I just can't. I mean, I can maybe move towards gratitude. It's slightly more on the equanimity side, but maybe dogs. Maybe I'll try dogs. That's slightly easier for me. Thank you.
So we have a level 2 coming up in September. If you're interested in diving into the attachment side of things, take a look at that. I have a couple of workshops coming up on Saturdays in September and October. One is called Exploration, which is really about thinking about primary versus secondary exploration, and also looking at the things that get in the way of that manifestation of the creative self that is the one that pursues the primary exploration. I like to talk about it as a duality between the urge to really engage life and also the fear of death. So that's coming up. And then I'm going to do one in October about artistic expression using my own photography as a kind of illustration for that. And talking about creative investigations that then produce works of art. So that's coming up. Take a look at that. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope that you'll make a donation. If you have resources, there's a donation link on the website. Any amount is appreciated. It helps support me and also the work Mettagroup is doing. Really appreciate your practice. It's wonderful to see you, and I will see you soon.